Just making sure that it's connecting. Okay, great. We're live. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Sarah.
Good to see you.
Pleasure, as always.
So we're here. It's week 3 of our series on teens and COVID and identity and the cultivation of identity. And I thought we could go ahead and reintroduce ourselves. We did that thoroughly in week 1, but maybe we could say why we're doing this. Would you like to go first? I'll check a few settings while you're going first.
Awesome. My name is Andrew Saldino, and I've been involved in teen education for a really long time, it feels like now. And most recently developed and ran a high school program here in Nashville called Aspire High, built around the cultivation of the whole teen. And now I'm doing private mentoring and tutoring, and particularly doing a mindful mentoring program for teens that's really a meditation-based mentoring program for teens. And it's really fun and awesome.
Thank you. Y'all, Andrew is one of the best educators I've ever seen. Straight up, you're one of the best educators I've ever seen, and parents, and one of the best parents I've ever seen. So yeah, Andrew and I are good friends and former colleagues. And Andrew was like calling me on the phone while I was a middle school principal locally, and we got to know one another. And so I'm Sarah Poet, and I have a career in education as well, a lot of holistic, character-based education. Now, if folks are following my work, I do a lot of soul-based work. And so I can look at the educational trajectory and really see that I was really always very interested in the development of the human soul and how we access the soul and how we have relationships with ourselves and our deepest selves. And so working with teens primarily in my career, I love this age group because it's the age of self-identification. I mean, you are really coming into who you are. And as adults, we can really allow for that to happen more gracefully, or we can get in the way. And I know as a parent, I unintentionally get in the way a lot, while I have my own agenda or want it a certain way. And so we're here to have really honest conversations about some of these realities that are going on right now in our young people. Andrew and I were hiking a few weeks ago and decided to just do these lives because we're working with a few teen clients and working on developing self-regulation and a self-identity through a mindfulness-based lens, which is very, very different than therapy. Like I'm realizing and hearing local therapists they're booked. They're like, you can't get in right now in a therapist's office in some places because shit's coming to the surface because the world is, we're in a very collective opportunity of soul awakening, as I would say it, but others would say it differently. And so therapy is one route, but we're in a time right now when the things coming to the surface can really be looked at as opportunities. And so I want to talk about, when we're talking about what's coming up with teens right now, as they're isolated from their friends, they're, not sure what the future is going to hold. Like there's a lot of questing for personal identity. I want to say to parents out there, like, great, let's ask those questions with the kids. Let's get them into a deeper relationship with themselves and, allow for this to be a deep opportunity of self-discovery rather than a time of complete freak out.
Yeah, I mean, just think how hard this time is for adults. Our frontal cortex is completely developed. Our sense of identity is fairly secure. Yeah. And yet these teens who are at as crucial a developmental stage as toddlers. Right?
It's so true. Yeah, the brain is actually going through a developmental stage very similar to toddlerhood. Yes.
Yeah, and that's why the behavior often seems like toddlers capable of rationalizing at very high levels
Right.
can get into more destructive things, right?
Yes.
With their adult body.
Yes.
So
they're like very irrational as a teen, they're like a toddler for the second time around. Don't tell them, but yeah, that's what's happening. That's totally what's happening in the brain.
Yeah, so it's a challenging time for teens because this crucial developmental stage is being stunted right now in a huge way. Neural pathways are not developing the way that they would be if we didn't have a year lockdown. And there's going to be remedial work that needs to be done. Like if you miss a year of math, you can't just jump to the next year of math. You gotta like do some work. So there, you know, being a teenager is always a challenging time, and always a challenging time, especially in our culture. And now we just added another layer on top of that. And
huge layer.
I have this one client that I'm working with, a young lady. It's maybe 20, around 20, and she'll miss the other things in her life, but she does not want to miss meditation with me, right?
It
And
feels so damn good.
Oh, it feels so good, right?
Yeah.
And she just loves it. And so that's really affirming to be like, okay, yeah, there is something of value happening that can't be easily quantified. I couldn't say, oh yes. I mean, I could do, you know, how you feel before and how you feel after, but the work that's being done obviously is much deeper than how are you feeling before and how are you feeling after. Oh, on one level, it's much deeper. On another level, it's, hey, if you experience feeling good in this way, then you might want to come back to try it, right? And do it again. So,
and don't go try to feel, side note, teens, you can feel good in your own mind and body. We talked about this last week a little bit, but you don't have to go engaging in, addictive behaviors and down the rabbit holes of screens and drugs and alcohol and those kinds of things. We want you to feel good in your own brain and body.
Yeah. I mean, there's this concept in Montessori education called valorization of the self.
And yeah, I want to hear you talk about this because I don't know about this. Yeah, I don't know Montessori so well.
Sorry. She was, in my mind, the best educational theorist I've ever read, and I've done her adolescent training program, and this valorization of the self is really, we call it like validation of the self, but it comes not through adults saying good job. It comes through, it's like an internal experience that young people have, that teens have, of feeling of value and utility in the world. And it's not something that can be given to them. Only opportunities can be put in front of them. For instance, cooking a meal for a family, right? That is, and then they we can't just tell them, oh, good job, and pat them on the shoulders. They have to experience that they have actually done a good job. They have done something of adult value and use in the world, because they don't want to be children anymore. They want to be adults. They want to take on adult level responsibility and achieve success through adult level responsibilities. And then that valorization comes, and it's partially an external process, right? It's peers, and it comes from other adults. And then ultimately, the part that I'm interested in the mindfulness practice is this kind of self-valorization that is not a Montessori concept. To me, it's like a 21st century kind of almost like a let's bring this idea of mindfulness, or even Buddhist mindfulness, into Montessori education, and talk about the self-valorization that can occur through meditative practice, right? Through affirmations, through experiences of calmness and peace within oneself, that one can get some of that valorization. One can't get it all because we are immensely social creatures and we need it socially. And that's the part that's being challenged right now, is the lack of opportunities for real valorization that teens need to develop.
Yeah. So I want to talk about what is going on inside of the brain and nervous system of the kiddo who's on online school all day, socializing with friends primarily via social media and the phones and apps, and probably maybe has like less physical activity and less outlet for some of the emotional charge and things like that come up, right? So they're sitting with it more so. Just, because, yeah, I just want to kind of bring it home. So I was talking to my son about this yesterday, actually, because when we're in the online school and looking at the screen, and when we're socializing in this way, and we don't have the nervous system outlets through the body, then the brain is ruminating in certain ways. I mean, all sorts of things are happening in the brain, right? All sorts of, like, the little devices are like made to be addictive. So the little, things in the brain are firing around the addictions. And this sense of self that you're speaking to, and the valorization of self, isn't possible in that way. Like, it's not possible through these outlets and these means. And I was expressing concern to my son whether or not he could hear it, because he's 12 now. I don't know. It could have been like one of those peanuts, like wah, wah, in his ear as we're sitting on the couch, and I think I'm saying something that really needs to be said as a mother, as we do. But I said, my desire is for you to really know yourself. My desire is not for you to like learn who you are through the reflections of these devices. It's not like, how are you knowing yourself right now? And are we able to see ourselves deeply? Are we able to take time every day to see ourselves deeply by going inside? Because there's a million ways to distract ourselves in the modern world. So getting back to your point, like, how do you really know yourself on the inside? And I love working with teens around this. I love talking about this because they are really, really hungry to know who they are. But so many do not have these skills that we're talking about, of being aware of the breath, being aware of what your mind is doing. I mean, as a culture, we're just like, here's your devices, here's your online school, just, take it away. And the brain is like, whoop, like on a roller coaster that doesn't stop. And so we're saying, let's come out of that. And there is a way to know your own breath, your own system, to hear your own thoughts again, rather than the ping pong of the, oh, there's a notification, I have to go get it, or,
There's a just doing a meditation with a teen recently, where I imagine they're on a bottom of a riverbed, and they can breathe underwater, and the leaf passes by and they observe it, and the leaf goes, and then I ask them to think about whatever thought comes into their head as this leaf, or feeling, whatever comes in, and they observe it, they watch what it does, and then they let it go. And this idea that, like, we don't have to completely identify with the thoughts and feelings, that there is a level of consciousness and reality that is much deeper than these passing phenomena that are going on in us. And you can't tell someone this, right? They gotta have experiences of it. And the second part I want to point out is that he's also talking about the breath. We breathe unconsciously all day long, and we can breathe unconsciously our entire life. And the path of development, I would say spiritual development, is the path of conscious breath work, right? If that's the energy channel that's coming into our body over and over again, then, and I just told this to this 19-year-old boy the other day, like, the more conscious breaths you can take, the greater your consciousness is going to be as a human being, right? And so, he'd never heard anything like that before, and we're practicing it, experiencing it. And I think it's really beautiful to just, planting these seeds of, hey, this breath work is important.
Yeah.
Right. And and you'll see the fruits of it. I hope that I won't just talk to you about it. You will actually see the fruits of the breath work in your own experience, drawing after our meditations, and that will carry with you. And you'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to be drawn to these things where this work is done, because I've had a taste of its value as a teen.
Yeah. One of the coolest things about mindfulness, and I want to say hello, if you're watching live, feel free to type a question. One of the coolest things about mindfulness is that it naturally generalizes as a skill. So what that means is, like, you learn it in one circumstance, and then people naturally apply it in other circumstances. So that's why I talk to teens and people of all ages about cultivating the breath practice on purpose, coming to session with you, or doing it on your own or listening to one of the recordings that you provide and cultivating that experience, because then the nervous system has the pattern. And so it's going to, like, kids are naturally going to apply that. It does apply to all ages, but they're naturally going to apply that in the next stressful circumstance. So this could be really amazing for combating some of these social pressures. Like we're talking about, the brain wants to feel good. So if the teenager is cultivating feeling good through a breath practice, through like, wow, I'm able to access some of these, metacognitive states, and I'm able to access what's going on in my brain and body. And I don't have to identify with every thought. I mean, those are really cool things, like to be discovering as a teen, and a conscious teen and a soul searching teen, like amazing skills, right? And then the next time that the social pressure comes in, like, hey, do you want to feel good by like putting this substance in your body? Or, hey, do you want to feel good by like taking this like radical chance? That's where the generalization of this can really, really pay off. When the teen is like, let me look at this from all angles. Let me center in my body system and my breath and my awareness system. I don't think that's a good idea. Yeah. Right? Rather than like being on the river as the leaf itself, like you were just saying, like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that. Well, I didn't think about the consequences. Terrifying.
This, so another thing I do with teens is, let's say a teen is struggling with social anxiety, and if they're in a fairly regulated state when we start a meditation, I might have the leaf on the stream, to go back to that previous metaphor, be once you go back to that last experience where you felt that social anxiety, right? And let them, in a sense, try to recreate the scene. Ask them like, what did things look like? What did they smell like? And then ask them to tap into like, what do you feel? Where do you feel sensations in your body? What kind of sensations do you feel? And then once they've gotten like, a little bit worked up in a safe space, right, then now we're going to let that leaf. Now we're going to return to the image of, we're on the bottom of the stream. And that leaf right there is this experience. And we're going to just let it go, right? And let that thing pass, to hopefully build a pathway for the next time they experience this social anxiety, that they can just be like, oh yeah, I feel that, right? And that, I mean, I feel it right here. I feel my heart constricting a little bit. I feel a little bit of tension in my belly, whatever it is. I mean, I would say that most of us, and especially the teens that are experiencing it, are not actually able to even identify or feel what's going on. And then there's some power over it, naming it, feeling it, and now like, oh, okay, I can let that pass now. I don't need to let this consume me, because I am not that leaf, right? It's just the thing that happens, and it happens to a lot of people.
Right. And so when we're talking about identity formation, we need teens to understand that they are not the thought, that they are not the glimmer of the experience, but they are the core being underneath. And that is their reference point. That is the reference point for self-identity and the self-valorization that you're talking about. I am who I am. And we want kids and teens, we want them to know that. And culturally, I don't want to sidetrack us too much, but culturally, the way our school systems and things like that have been set up, it's like, well, you put who you really are kind of at the door, and you go into this door and you learn all of these other things, and you're tested in certain ways. And so our systems of education are standardly not set up to help young people actually know who they are, which is something I can get really passionate about talking about. And so we are here to educators and former educators at heart, former school leaders, saying we actually need them to know who they are on the inside before anything else, like before memorization of anything else, because that's what's going to carry them. Like, we don't want followers, we want leaders, and leaders have to know themselves.
And I would say that knowing oneself process, yeah, it comes through the self practices, and especially as teens, the peer interaction is so crucial. They want to know their place.
Yeah.
Where are my people? Where's my place? What am I good at? Right? I mean, one thing that we did Aspire High again was ask, what is the unique gift that you have to offer the world, that the world will not be the same if you don't find and express and share that gift with the world.
Right.
Right. And so, yeah, a lot of work of like, what is it? What am I good at? Because this is what teens want to know. They want to know, are they funny? Like, are they a quote unquote good artist? Like, what do they do that gives them value in the world and makes them unique? Because I mean, I absolutely deeply believe that each of us have unique gifts that only we can provide to the world, and that both our liberation and the world's liberation are bound together in us locating and expressing these gifts to the world.
Yeah.
And that to me is a fun thing for adults to do with teens, that like, hey, we're in this together, you know, like Sarah and I, we're figuring this out too, right? We can sit here and talk. We can sit here and talk about like we got it figured out, but look, man, we're just figuring it out too. And hopefully we're a little farther along the path, and we can provide some guidance, you know, for you so that your journey can go as smoothly as possible.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I always say, here's what I found, take it or leave it, but when presented that way and by a non-parent adult, I mean, I'm not talking about my own son right now. He's like, he's got his radar, like his anti-mom radar up right now, right? So like it has to come from other trusted members of the tribe. I would like to, we're at about 20 minutes right now. And I would like to talk about tribe a little bit today, because you're referencing that a lot of how we know who we are as young people, as older people, are to look around in our community and to know ourselves in the reflection of others and to find our place. And right now there are less opportunities than ever for that. And maybe if I don't do a great job of like bridging this and bringing it all together, my big thoughts in my head right now, you can help me bring it back. But before we were live, I was talking to you and I said, one thing that was really coming through as I was preparing for this today was like, I want to talk to moms a little bit. Being the mom of a son and the father lives in another house. And having worked with teen boys, primarily teenagers and boys, for the majority of my education career, I've studied teen boy individuation and this need for purpose and valorization a lot. Like, how do boys find that? And right now, well, historically in our culture, indigenous people would have, more tribal living and working in communal situations. And then the boys would get to a certain age and they would individuate from the mother and like leave the women's camp, right? And would be initiated into manhood and into like the tribe of men and what that means. Not only are we missing that as a culture right now, but we're also missing tribe in general. Like, tribe is getting harder to identify. And so as the mom, a single mom of a boy, I specifically need to and make it a point to involve other male figures in his life. Because yes, he has his father, but if his whole notion of like what life is about comes from mom and dad, it's not good enough, right? Like, I want him to know more about the women and femininity and motherhood and like all of that from more than me. So like he has an amazing female teacher, female guidance counselor, my friends in his life. Like, he sees different examples. I want him to see that. And then I want him to have the same for male figures. And just to also say to moms who might be in the same situation or a similar situation raising boys, that it's super normal for them to be individuating heavily from mom, like, 12, 13, it really, really begins. And they're looking for the male influence. My son had a really bad one-wheel accident yesterday, and he was at a friend's house, female friend of mine. When it happened, she took amazing care of him. He was in great hands. In the car, he was like, that was amazing. She really helped me out. And we get home, and she and I had been talking to him like, here's how you're going to care for it. We're going to get you a nice warm bath, and I've got all the provisions. We stopped at CVS on the way home. So on the way home, he texts dad and says, look what happened. And dad is the one wheeler. Dad is like, knows all about road rash from skateboard accidents, like that. That's their bond, right? So I had all these things on the counter that I was gonna like help bandage him up, and he was like, dad did not say this is what I need. So dad said like, hey, be sure to put this thing on it. And I had all the homeopathics, all the antibiotic ointments, and he was like, that is not what dad said. So that's just like one concrete example of this period of individuation where it's like I don't know what you've got going on, mom, but dad said I need this and it's not here. So I was like, okay, kid, well, I know how to take care of your pets, but concrete example I wanted to leave there. So what comes up for you as I talk about that?
If your teenagers are not pushing back, and the pushback is them figuring out who they are in the world, right? And they, by the time they hit puberty, they're pretty much done with mom and dad, at the level of telling me what to do.
Yeah.
And so if they're not pushing back by the time they're teens, then I would say that's then there's a little bit of developmental delay there, because the pushback is the individuation that's really starting to kick in strongly, and that this is a healthy and valuable thing, and incredibly frustrating for parents, incredibly frustrating. And this is where the parent has to step back a little bit and not get super activated by this, and be strategic and think about what to do. And I should be taking your son on camping trips for the weekend, right? And other people should be taking my kids to go do things. And now, this last year, people don't even want to see their friends, right? So it's it's gotten harder, but ultimately, the mental and emotional health and development of our kids needs to come first. And I think we're seeing that now with people saying we need to be reopening schools. This needs to be happening. Our kids need to get out, right? And but it's still going to be in the public school environment, it's still going to be a pretty stilted environment, right? It's not going to be particularly satisfying to students to meet their needs. Stay away, masks, just not normal social human interaction. But it is becoming normalized for these kids through this time period, right? And we're going to see a lot of kids come out of this with more anxiety issues, right? Of they just spent a year being told not to touch or get near other people, and that they might be a vector for illness that's going to kill somebody. And these things have serious impacts on kids at developmentally sensitive periods. So other adults, get your kid with other adults doing things, experiences that are like, oh, should I do that? Should I let my kid go? I'm nervous about my kid going camping for a weekend with somebody else. Okay, perfect. That's probably a really good, thing to do then.
Yeah.
Because your son won't be able to play the same games with me that he plays with you.
No, from a very young age. I've been putting the kid on the trampoline with you because you play very different than I do. And I want him to have that play. I was like, ooh, proprioception is happening with Andrew. It was like wrestling on the trampoline, I was like, this is so good for him. So yeah, for sure. We need each other right now. Yeah. And I just wanted to slip in that special little message for moms of boys. It's very normal. And If moms want resources for that, they can reach out to me to learn about that as women, because it's very, very important that we not take our man baggage and put it on our boys. And that's the unconscious thing that will happen at this stage of individuation, when the boy is individuating from the mother and the bond has been so amazing, or so, been the mother child bond for so long, and now he's individuating. The mom can take that very personally, unconsciously, if she doesn't check her shit. So we got to check our shit, women, and not do that to our boys, as much as possible. That's called the mother wound, and we don't want that. We don't want that on our boys.
What's the number one tip you would give to mothers about that in terms of their teen boys?
Well, it's like we've been talking about the last 2 weeks. The self-awareness in the adult is very, very important. So if I did not know what I know about mindfulness and checking my own breath and my own reactivity, in addition to the developmental stages around boys and manhood, it would be so natural to project my shit around man and masculine onto my son. Like, it happens and I'm like, oh, I did that, but I just want to normalize, like, it's so normal, but please, let's educate ourselves and stop. And so if you're upset with your son related to something his father did or another man did, check yourself and stop talking. Check yourself and stop talking, and make it so that you can be in dialogue with your child about you and your child.
Are you suggesting you have some baggage about the masculine, Sarah?
I don't think that's any secret. Have I not been explicit? No, we all do. We all do as women. That's why I talk about it. And men have their shit with, back in the other direction. So.
For sure, I do, and we all do.
And it's all connected, and which is why I love celebrating the scope of my work, from former educator of teens to doing this masculine and feminine work, because again, it all comes back to, do we know ourselves? Can we be regulated in our own breath and our own identity? And then it's just like we're watching when the shit comes up, right? Like watching when we get triggered, being self-aware, and then developing the skills to be in that, whatever age. So.
Yeah, I'll share one offering that I'm having. It's actually a private offering through an organization now, but I may make a public offering of like a kind of like teen mindfulness group that meets, right? And, one evening a week, and do, even just journaling activities, asking students to do, some journaling and then share. Like there's a real paucity of authenticity and space for authentic sharing that's moderated by adults. I mean, social media for teens is just a jungle. I mean, it is an absolute jungle that they are learning to interact with each other, and the games that they're learning to play and the defenses they're putting up are so intense and so
It's inauthentic. It's absolutely inauthentic and does not get to that self-identity like we're talking about. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, and just think as adults how we curate our social media personas, right? And I didn't even have a cell phone until I was 30. I didn't have social media until I was, 38 or something like that, right? So for they are learning who they are through these practices. They are learning more about themselves through their social media interactions than they are almost any other place right now. And that ought to give us all some deep pause about about what we're doing, and seek out, okay, like what can I do about this? And one way is seeking other adults to curate and moderate spaces for your kid to actually have real human interaction in a space where there's some authenticity that can be in service of real growth.
Beautiful. So people can reach out to you for the information about that group. Wonderful. So again, we'll put our links to our offerings in the comments here, and reach out if you have a situation where you want to consult with either of us. How I work, I'm sure it's similar to what you do, but if a parent reaches out to me and says, hey, I have a teen that's going through a thing, I always involve the teen in the consult process, because they're autonomous beings and I want them to feel that from the very beginning. And so, we would have that conversation and just open up the inquiry about developing a relationship. And if the teen says yes, then I'm like, okay, we'll do it for a trial. Like what feels good to them, rather than the parental like top down, like, now you're going to go see this therapist, now you're going to do this. With teens, we really want to leave a lot of space for choice. And so Andrew and I, on the phone with teens or on a Zoom call, like very relational, very just wanting to get to know the kid, the young adult, and respecting them and their process. And if we're not a fit, that'll be okay too, because it's got to be a fit that's mutual. So
yeah, I don't work with any teens that don't say yes.
Right.
This is what I want to work. I want to work with you. But, I want to come to your school program because I don't have the time or energy to fight that fight. Right.
We did that for a long time, didn't we? I have a whole career of, the arm twisting and the like, oh, you don't want to be here, let's convince you to be here. No, I don't do that anymore.
I want the resistances that come within the yes. Like, okay, I've said yes.
Right.
And now there's going to be resistances that come up. And then, do you want this? Do you want to do this work? Because this is what it entails. And there will be resistances that will come up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we're going to work through.
Right. And then they're willing to go with you. And that's soul work. That's the deep and beautiful work of, doing real impactful work at the soul level, that I'm calling the soul level. It's like the identity level. So, all right, friend. Well, it's a pleasure to chat with you on our Monday chats. We'll be back again next week.
It's always so enlivening, Sarah. I feel so enlivened because this is what I've spent my life cultivating, is this these practices, these ideas, and like living them and getting to talk to you about these things is really enlivening. So thank you so much, and a pleasure always to talk to you.
Absolutely. You as well. And thanks for watching, everyone. And reach out to us if we can help, or drop a comment and tag us. And see you next week.
Beautiful.
Bye.